Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience.
This message comes from our sponsor, AdScale. AdScale makes e-commerce advertising easy with automation and AI. AdScale connects to your store, helping you to create and manage ad campaigns across multiple channels in one place. From easy ad creation with 24/7 optimization to AI audience targeting and AI ad copy using integrated Chat GPT, AdScale provides everything you need to acquire more customers and increase their lifetime value. For more information, visit adscale.com.
Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen Robinson, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Antonella Pisani, who is the founder and CEO of Dallas-based Eyeful Media, a digital marketing and consulting firm focused on performance marketing and digital strategy for mid-market companies. Welcome to the podcast, Antonella.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to have a chance to speak with you today.
Yes, and I'm excited to talk to you as well. Today, we're going to be talking about something I don't think we've really covered them directly, at least on the podcast, which is the Net Promoter Score, what it means to an e-commerce business, what it is, how they could benefit from tracking it, and the kind of all the ins and outs of the Net Promoter Score. So that's the hot topic of today. But before we do get into all of that, if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit more about your background and specifically how you got into what you're doing today.
Sure thing. So I got involved with digital marketing and building websites as early as '96. So we got a good pair of veterans on here. I'm sure we can talk for hours and hours.
For sure.
And, started out building websites for my university. It was a work study job for a couple of years, and then got into web analytics, digital marketing, and e-commerce general management. Worked on the in-house corporate side for companies like ProFlowers, Guitar Center, JCPenney, and Fossil. And then about 6 years ago, decided to start consulting by myself, and one thing led to another. And so through word of mouth, now we're a team of about 26 people. I think we're in about 14 different states now, supporting different companies. And it's a nice blend of kind of former in-house marketers as well as former agency or big agency marketers as well.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good mix to have, people that are familiar with working with the big agencies, the kind of enterprise level stuff, as well as people that are, familiar with working kind of boots on the ground with smaller businesses, startups, and the like. So that's a great team that you have there. And thank you for sharing that background. As I mentioned, of course, the top episode today, we're going to be talking about the Net Promoter Score. And so really the first thing is, for anyone that's not familiar with what that is, why don't you tell us really what it is and why it's important?
Yeah, for sure. So even if people haven't heard the phrase Net Promoter Score, I'm confident that most everyone here has received this survey that just says, hey, are you willing to recommend this to a friend or family member, or it might say a colleague? So that one simple question really makes up Net Promoter Score. And what Net Promoter Score is, it's really like a measure of your customers' satisfaction with either your product or your service. And what it is it's a formula that's looking at the percentage of people that are promoters. So that would be a score of a 9 or 10 on a 0 to 10 scale. And then you take that percentage and then back out the percentage of what's called a detractor, which is people that have given you a 0 to a 6. So effectively, people who are 7s and 8s get considered as neutral, and those numbers get thrown out because they're not going to be your raving fans, but they're also not going to be out, bad mouthing you either. And so it's a simple way to understand, like, are your clients happy with you at the end of the day? And I think you can correlate it to their likelihood to come back and repurchase and say nice things about you.
Yeah. Good stuff there. And it makes total sense. And like you said, even if people aren't familiar with that term, Net Promoter Score, I'm sure they've gotten the email, because I get them to this day. Consistently, brands are steadily using it. And so, that's kind of one of the indications of why it's important. Because if you have some of these major brands still sending out those emails, will you rate us on a scale from 1 to 10? What's the likelihood that you would recommend us to somebody? That's typically what it is. And so if the big guys are doing it, it's something that we all really need to take a look at. Now, it seems pretty straightforward, as you mentioned. Simple survey you can send out to your customers, people that purchased. You can kind of think about what time frame, of course, that you want to send that out, but pretty straightforward email that you're going to be sending out there. Now, to do this, as far as like an e-commerce brand is concerned, are there any particular tools or resources that you're going to need to have in place to not only facilitate this whole process of getting that survey sent out, but then taking a look at the results, which is really the heart of this, calculating the score, and then really, what do you do with it once you've done that?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say a couple of things. So one is, I think this is actually really important for smaller businesses as well, right? So, we capture this for ourselves. And I think that in a way, the smaller the business too, like the more that every single customer really matters. And so regardless of the size of your business, I'd encourage people to capture this. So it can be done a few different ways. So, you can use a survey tool. If you want to go pretty inexpensively, you can use a SurveyMonkey or Typeform. There's other tools like Qualtrics. We actually prefer a tool called Ask Nicely. And the reason for that is it allows us to kind of slice and dice the data a little bit more and understand, okay, what types of customers are happiest with you? Which kinds of customers are maybe a little bit less happy? And also really getting that feedback that pairs with the score. Because I think the score is really important, but then understanding the why behind the score is really critical in improving it. And I think what I would say is, like, the main reason to start capturing it is so you know where you stand, and then you can actually take proactive steps to improve upon that score. For an e-commerce business, I think there's a few ways to do it. So, you can do it as like a feedback tab. You can use, I think, like a Hotjar or something like that, or doing a prompt. I've used some different tools. Trying to remember the original names. A lot of these companies have kind of morphed names, but you can do something like that at the end of checkout, and that's going to give you more of a score of like satisfaction of the website. You can even do, like, if you go to like a Home Depot or something like that, you'll see a feedback tab that you can engage with. And the value of doing it there before someone has purchased is it also gives you a little bit of context on how people are feeling about your site overall. So you can capture it a couple different times. You could obviously send an email. I would recommend waiting maybe at least like a week after you've delivered the product to the client if you're an e-commerce business, so that they have a sense for engaging with whatever they bought from you. It'll be a reflection of like your fulfillment process as well, because I think as well as I do that you can have an awesome looking website and the product can be great, but if fulfillment's not great, that's going to negatively impact perceptions.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like, if you're selling something that's maybe like a software solution, sometimes you can do a prompt like within the actual platform as well. So different ways to go about it. What's really nice with this score is that it's not a complicated formula to figure out. So you don't need to be this like analytics wizard. And most of the tools that I mentioned, they'll just give you what your score is. It's such a simple formula that, Excel or a calculator will get you there. You don't need much more than that. So it's more about just getting started and starting to get that baseline for yourself.
Gotcha. Now, let's say you've gone through this process and you mentioned some key things here that I'm glad you brought up, that you don't have to just track it in one place. Like you don't have to just use it as like an email campaign post-purchase, because, that's a lot of times you see companies doing that. I get tons of those emails, but that is not the only way you can do it. You can do it on the site, immediately after checkout, just to get that initial feedback on the site. And then, yeah, like you said, even in the live chat, just to get people's impression of certain components or areas of your website. So you can really take the pulse with that score in multiple areas. And that's very key. And so I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, let's say a company has gone through the process, they've got the score, and whether it's calculated, they manually calculate it. What do they do with that score? And what is that saying about their company once they have that score?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the big thing is understanding now relative to a benchmark, like how are you doing, right? So
Yeah.
80 and above is considered world class. I'd have to look at the different thresholds below that, but I think the first thing is understanding, are you at a 0 or are you at a negative score? And so depending on where you show up, that's going to drive really what your next steps are. Like if I won't name names, but I will tell you the first time I deployed it at one of the companies where I worked, it came back, and this was just a website one. It was a negative score, which that's a tough place to start, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, what was really cool is the tool was actually giving us information about the browser version and the operating system and device and all of this. And so we figured out that like the site wasn't loading for a bunch of people. And that's part of what was driving some of those poor scores. And so, this is why I was saying getting that feedback associated with it and being able to slice and dice the information. If you're a decent sized e-commerce company, it's worth investing in that versus like a straight up Survey Monkey type solution, so that you can see what's driving your lower scores or what's driving your higher scores, right? If you're doing pretty well, like we have a client that, their 12-month average was, call it a 76. And, they started taking the scores that were a little bit lower and immediately contacting those people, right? And figuring out, hey, what can we do to make this right? And over the last couple of months, like this score has gotten over an 80 now because of that diligence of reaching out to people that are getting a little bit lower score. And that's why I said, even with the smaller companies, it's really important, because sometimes, it could be something you're not even aware of that's driving it. It could be something they heard, or it could be something with the fulfillment process that really wasn't something that your business screwed up, right? It could have been an UPS issue or FedEx issue. And so I think it's really, once you've got that score, creating your benchmark, getting to the understanding of what the drivers are, good and bad, so that you can start proactively working against those. I first learned about this back in the day at Pro Flowers, and there, like, we had calculated the dollar value of each NPS point. So we knew if like we could get that score up, an extra point or an extra 2 points, what it was worth to our business.
Okay.
That type of analysis is getting a little bit more advanced. I think for most companies right now, it's just, hey, are folks happy with me or not, and why?
Yeah. That's the bottom line. And that really can just kind of say a lot right there. It's just people's overall opinion of your company, at various points. Now, I know a lot of the brands and companies that are listening, people these days are really always concerned about the individual touch points that they have with their customers or even the prospective customers, and sending out something like this or taking the poll of something like this. A lot of times your companies are going to be a little bit more cautious about what they're asking, when they're asking. Now, do you recommend adding other questions along with this, or always keep it more as an individual question, just, ask for the rating, leave it at that? Or have you ever seen, or would you suggest bundling this in with some other, feedback questions that the company would want to ask?
Yeah, I think you can bundle it in. I would say lead with this question, right?
Okay.
And so, I mean, I can walk you through how we do it for ourselves, and similar how we implemented it for that company is, the first question is the NPS question, right? And then what is cool with those more advanced tools is you can build in logic. And so let's say that person is a promoter, so they've given us a 9 or 10. The next thing is, and it's done in almost like it feels like you're just texting with someone. It's a really cool interface.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it really easy to get more details without it feeling intrusive or annoying, right? Because it's just like, oh, I'm just texting with someone. It's like a chat bot, basically. And so, you know, if someone gives you a 9 or 10, then it's like, hey, awesome. What is it that we did that delighted you? And maybe that it's like a select 1 from 5 options. And then it's, hey, great, thanks so much. Is there something we could do better for you? Right. And then it could be those same 5 options. And then based on that, we may refine one more time. Conversely, let's say we got a 0 to 6 score. That's when it's like, okay, this person doesn't like you very much, so I'm not going to ask for a lot of details. I may just say, hey, I'm so sorry to hear that. You know, we'd really like the opportunity to make it right. Which of these things could we be doing better for you? And it's like, pick 1 of 5. So I think you have to be thoughtful about it, and I think you can get away with asking your promoters a little bit more detail than you can your distractors. Like, they're not going to want to spend a bunch of time, but you can at least use it as an opportunity to try to get, you know, one thing that's maybe a little bit quantitative, like pick one of these options from these 5, and then one piece that's a little bit more qualitative, like, hey, anything else you want to share?
Gotcha.
So, you know, I think keep it tight. I wouldn't go ask like 15 questions, and then lead with something like this. A lot of the tools, if you are doing it through email, you can just embed the survey into the email. So they're really just clicking a button, or what looks like a button within the email. They're just picking their score right from there. And then that opens up the ability to ask more questions. But that way, at least you capture that score right away.
Gotcha. So basically with some of these tools, then you can lead with this question, as you said, what you guys do. And then is it based on that, the response? So like if they're a, 0 to 6, you're going to ask a different follow-up question as opposed to somebody that says that they rates you a 9.
Yeah. And same thing on the promoter side, right? Like, and you can do logic based on what they've picked. So let's say for us, one of the options was like analytics. Great. We'd love more details. Like, is it the speed of analytics, the frequency of analytics, the depth of analytics? And so I think when you have the ability to use that logic and make it really easy, like you'll be able to extract a little bit more info.
Gotcha. Yeah, one other question that I have, and I don't know if this has changed as far as kind of like the whole history of this Net Promoter Score, but I do recall several years back, if you were going to use this type of rating system, or at least call it the Net Promoter Score, I don't know if it was like a licensing fee or something you had to pay the organization or the company that initially came up with that whole concept, if you're going to use the name Net Promoter Score. Is that still the same case, or is it at this point, is it just kind of wide open?
I think it's probably pretty wide open. Like, certainly for the e-commerce site or whoever's sending out the survey. I mean, when you're sending something out, you're not really using that phrase anyway. You're just saying, hey, we'd love your feedback, or can you share your thoughts? I think where there may be a licensing thing is like the software, right? So if Qualtrics or Ask Nicely or someone like that is advertising their product for Net Promoter Score, there might be some licensing fees.
Gotcha.
I haven't gotten involved with that side. I just think, if you're a brand or a service organization, you're never saying that to your clients anyway.
Yeah,
what it is.
Exactly. That's kind of what I thought. I think you're right. I think it comes down to the fact where if you're a software company and you're looking to incorporate that as a tool within your solution, you can't call it Net Promoter Score, because that's they just trademark names. But if anyone is just looking to use it anyway as a brand, you're not going to mention Net Promoter Score, because people are going to be like, what is that anyway? That's probably going to confuse people even more. So that makes a lot of sense. as we get ready to wrap things up, I'm always interested in kind of looking at examples of brands that are using some of these strategies. You mentioned, of course, your company uses it internally, but I wanted to see if there's any other companies that you can mention or highlight that use the Net Promoter Score. If you can give specific details on kind of how they used it, what their results were, if they made any changes based on that, what were they, and how did it benefit their company?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think they'd be mad at me for sharing this because it's good scores. But yeah, the client that I mentioned is a company called Peacock Alley. They do luxury linens, and their score, we implemented the solution that we use, which is the one with a lot of that logical conditioning in it. And so we could capture a score based on, not only an overall score, but understand it's like, oh, people who bought sheets gave you this kind of score. People who bought blankets gave you this kind of score. People who bought pillowcases gave you this kind of score. And so that ability to slice it up a little bit. And so they started really high. I would say just shy of that world-class score. But I pulled some of the benchmarks just before this call, is if you look at kind of their 12-month average versus year to date, we've moved over to world class. It's improved by about 5 points, which is pretty meaningful. And I would say the way that that's been done is, one of the things has been having that segmentation to understand, like, are there certain products causing dissatisfaction or, less happy clients, getting that feedback to see, okay, what are the things that are tripping people up? And then what we do is actually route it. So if someone gives a low score, that feedback immediately gets sent to the customer care team. And so that customer care team can immediately reach out to that person and say, hey, we're so sorry about this. We just got your feedback. What can we do? Can we hop on the phone? And so, one thing that we always recommend is capture that NPS score at a certain cadence, whether it's every quarter, whether it's every year, but just watch how those individual customers also trend and change. But, there was some feedback about the website that was coming in. We were right in the midst of a redesign. So I think with the redesign, like, that addressed some of those customer issues as well. But that's been a pretty fun case study just because it was already high, but then getting it to continue to go higher by just monitoring and being really responsive and looking for those patterns in the things that might have been causing some dissatisfaction.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think the key thing there that you mentioned is really using that information and being proactive really with it. And because if you're getting certain people or a few people that are rating it, their experience in a certain way, most likely there's going to be others. So if you kind of jump right on it based on that initial poor response or that low response, get it over to your customer care team and then kind of jump right on it. I think, that makes sense because you'll be able to identify any holes that you have in your business and hopefully prevent others from, that lower rating. So that's the key thing. And I think with marketing in general, these days, especially, we have all of this data coming in from various sources, trying to figure out what our customers are doing, their behavior on our website. There's a ton of things and metrics that we're all tracking, but the bottom line is if you're just tracking these things, storing them in a database, and you're not doing anything with it, you might as well not even be tracking them at all. So that's the key thing there, is just to make sure that you make use of that data. And a great way to do it, like you said, is in that example, they immediately jumped on it and tried to resolve any issues to prevent other people having that same dissatisfaction there.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be little things, right? Like one of the things that I've seen crop up on various e-commerce sites, especially something that's like textiles or clothing, is like, oh, the color swatch wasn't quite the same as the product, right? And those like little things like that. And so it is so much about just getting that feedback, right? So that you can go, oh, well, geez, like it was this shade of gray, but the product is this shade of gray. And so let me update the swatches, or, small changes like that. Once you get this customer feedback, one way I like to think about this also is it's kind of this army of QA people, right? Like most companies do not have enough QA resources, like content QA. And so all of a sudden, like, people do like to give feedback, it seems like. And so all of a sudden you have this army of QA people on different devices and browsers and OSs, and they're just giving you insight into stuff that might not be quite right. And so it's an awesome opportunity if you take that data and actually act on it, to your point, right? Like, just having the score and not doing anything with it, like, even if you have an awesome score, like, you can't stay idle because someone else is on your tail. So always be striving forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that you have that army of QA people, which you're totally right. It's your customers. Everybody's looking to give their opinion about something and that feedback. So you might as well take advantage of it and use that to your benefit, for sure. Well, Antonella, this has been an awesome conversation. As I mentioned, we hadn't really talked directly about the Net Promoter Score before in the podcast, so this is very, very refreshing. I know it's going to go a long way with our listeners and our viewers as well. And thank you for coming on. We really appreciate that. But before we do let you go, we always like to switch gears, and just so that our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So if you don't mind sharing one quick fun fact that you think we'd be interested to know.
Yeah. Fun fact is I've been super involved with service and giving back since I was about 16. So a really long time ago now. It's something that we bring into the company pretty heavily. Like, we support a ton of organizations. And the fun fact is that hopefully in the next few days, I've got my own nonprofit going live. And so that's going to be a big adventure on top of running an agency. So that's a big fun one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Service is always a good thing, and always have to, no matter what you're doing, always got to give back some way to help others that are less fortunate. So I definitely applaud you in that, and I'll be looking forward to what you have going on once you get all that together, for sure. Well, great. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Antonella. I appreciate that. And lastly, before we do let you go, if any of our listeners want to reach out to you and pick your brain any more about the Net Promoter Score or kind of anything digital marketing, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. Best bet, you can go to our website. It's Eyeful Media, which is EYEFULMedia.com, or you can track me down on LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. We'll definitely recommend people to check you out. Check out your website. We'll have the link in the show notes, and definitely look you up in LinkedIn as well. So thanks again, Antonella, for joining us today on the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Thanks so much. Great speaking with you.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level, but are tired of wading through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.